Very quickly, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to Professor Cook for giving me this opportunity to deliver this presentation. If anyone is interested in sending me any questions or any comments whatsoever, I will have my email address made available at the end of this presentation. In this presentation, I will propose an extension to Nicholas Rescher's theory of axiogenesis. Rescher's theory is, in short, that value is an ultimate conditioning principle for the way that the actual world is structured. The ultimate reason why reality has the overall structure that it has is because it was for the best for it to have this nature. If this sounds like a Leibnizian theory of metaphysical optimalism, it is intentional on Rescher's part, for he finds in Leibniz's metaphysics much that is cogent and can be further developed into an original theory of sufficient reason. Rescher's theory of axiogenesis argues that there is a sufficient reason behind not only the world's existence, but also why it is this specific world of ours, with its given physical features and laws. The reason is that this is the best situation that could have been realized from the infinity of possibility. In other words, this was the best possible world to be realized. Here we can clearly see how axiogenesis places the quality of value as an integral element in not only the world's constitution, but also its explanation by claiming that our world exists because it was the worthiest world for realization. In fact, one of the key elements of Rescher's theory turns on the world's explainability. Of all possible worlds, it is the best that it be a world that is rationally investigatable by possible intelligent inhabitants. So it is not suggested here that creatures capable of rational investigation had to exist. It is only that ours would have to be a world that is amenable to such investigators if they ever happen to naturally exist. The existence of intelligent creatures is also a matter of contingency for Leibniz, for their existence would be just one of the infinite possibilities that would be realized. But one of the features that distinguishes Rescher's optimality from Leibniz's is that, for Rescher, the evaluation of what is the best is not conducted by an intelligent agency. In other words, the worthiness of our world was not determined by divine fiat, nor by anything efficiently causal. Indeed, Rescher is emphatic that there is nothing causal or active in the values themselves. It is just that the sufficient condition for our world's realization is inherent in what Rescher regards as the most fundamental nature of reality itself, that it is predisposed to rational order and consistency. This is because if there is an infinite number of alternatives for existence, then there will be those that maximize chance, novelty, and variety, while minimizing regularity to the point of sheer chaos. Or they will maximize law and diminish chance, novelty, and variety to the point of uneventful monotony. But in those alternatives, with a certain degree of balance amongst chance, novelty, variety, and an economy of laws, then the capability of their realization as a world that can contain intelligent life increases. Intelligence here is valued as preferable, not just because we value our own intelligence, but because intelligence itself evinces a self-sustaining and self-justifying order of things and their conditions. We can readily concede that if we can understand our world, it is because we are here to understand it. But Rescher is arguing that our world is here because it is understandable. This is because ours, unlike other possible worlds, would not have some feature that would block it from existing. That if a world had some quality of unity different from the degree of consistency, uniformity, regularity, economy, richness, and other things that are discernible as features of our world, then this world's rational discernibility as a world that can exist thereby diminishes. worlds that lack intelligence-friendly aspects thus do not have a competitive advantage for realization, because such a lack would be indicative of something that was inferior in its very nature as an ordered and self-sustaining world. In other words, there would be something defective in the order of the world itself as a world that can be realized as an actual world. For instance, if our world lacked any regularity, then there would be not only no means for rational justification, but this would also imply the absence of any sort of togetherness to the world whatsoever. Too much regularity would come to the same thing, as there would be no elements for a judgment to draw meaningfully comparative or contrasting conclusions from, and thus without the means for reality to not descend into a perfect and absolute blank. But again, this calculus of possibility is accomplished by possibility, and not by any actual process or agency. Rescher expressly locates the operation of optimalism in the realm of possibility, and indicates that this realm of possibility is independent of the actual insofar that actuality does not determine the generic nature of being as such. Metaphysical optimalism thus does not need to presume anything but itself for its operation, because, as we have indicated, those alternatives that do not best exemplify a self-sustaining orderliness, and thus in consequence becoming amenable to rational explication, eliminate themselves from the field. What is left are conditions for a world that would be realized as a consistent whole, involving those diverse and diversifying features that can make consistency be realized as an actual world. Thus, it necessarily had to have been the case that reality would provide the conditions for there to be a world, and that it be a world with its given physical laws and features friendly to, but again not necessitating, the existence of intelligent beings. This is why, argues Rescher, we may understand the conditions arrived at through axiogenesis to really be the best, because the possible existence of rational beings is the most meritorious alternative that would obtain for a rationally predisposed reality. In a way, Rescher thereby agrees with Hegel's conclusion that the real is the rational and the rational the real. But it seems to me that relationality is left outside of the reach of Rescher's theory. That is, it would presuppose relationality, but it would not be able to explain relationality, at least not as it presently stands. Relationality is crucial to Rescher's theory in that it not only pertains to the best possible order of our world, and of which and of what sort of unity of values would typify the order as being the best, but it also pertains to the realm of possibility as a whole, including all those possible orders that are eliminated as inferior. Rescher's theory, as we have said, presumes that the possibilities that condition our world has a reality independent of actuality. This means that there is a completeness and continuity to the order of the possible independent of the actual world. But why is there any relational togetherness amongst any aspect of possibility, let alone a togetherness exemplified through every aspect of it? The Rescherian answer may be that it is for the best that there is such a relational order. That is, if it is the case that the most meritorious conditions prevail against alternatives, and what makes one condition more meritorious than another is its amenability to realizing the possibility of rational comprehension, and if rational comprehension is literally incomprehensible without relationality, then relationality would not only have to obtain, but would obtain in the best possible way. But the best already assumes an evaluative maximum derived from the order of possibility, without yet explaining why possibility has any order at all. In other words, it becomes viciously circular to credit relationality to optimality, when optimality operates from there being already a relational unity of alternatives for existence, as well as unity of the very scale that distributes the relative merits for possible existence. Being that I am myself an idealist philosopher of a certain stripe, I believe that there is a great deal of merit to Rescher's Leibnizian theory. But in order to get to the best, we must first consider things more primitively. How can something have any determinable value in the first place? That is, to be within a relational matrix of relative values. To answer this, we should consider how there is any relationality at all for the sake of evaluating possible orders. The most convincing explanation that I have found thus far is from Alfred North Whitehead, whose contention is that relationality itself is derived from within a process that is also one of valuation. But such a process, says Whitehead, is properly given to the actual, not the possible. Rescher had ruled that out, because actualities are causally transformative of other actualities, but have no purely formative power, formational power, regarding non-substantive things like possible worlds. But Whitehead conceives of what an actuality is capable of doing in a different sort of way, and I shall try to explain his alternative approach with as minimum an amount of Whiteheadian concepts and terms as I can manage. First, regarding possibility, Whitehead also conceives possibility as a unity of conditions for what can happen in actuality. This is a relational continuum of elements that hosts the condition for possibilities as they pertain to mathematics, logic, the natural world, and the world of subjectivity. A mathematical or logical deduction is an extrapolation of some mode of togetherness amongst the elements of this continuum. And a law of nature is a realization of a particular pattern from these modes of togetherness that is repeated as both a framework for construction and a principle of limitation in the natural world. Finally, the continuum also provides the means for subjective realization as orders of various qualities for feeling, enjoyment, and telic purpose made available for each other and every actual process. Actual process for Whitehead becomes through a vastly complex process of synthesizing its component processes, which are called prehensions. A prehension has many aspects. It is a vector-like evolution of energy transference. It is a principle and means of perception and causality. It is a process of objectification and transformation. And in actual occurrences of sufficient complexity, it is the principle and means of spatial awareness, imagination, propositional thought, and judgment. An occurrence of actuality is entirely composed and constituted by prehensions, and its syntheses and unification is effectuated by prehensions. A prehension, as a process of synthesis, is not simply a subjective process that incorporates objective material external to it. Rather, the notion of prehension describes the very process of establishing a determinative unity between the incorporated material to be synthesized, the process of synthesis itself, and the resultant determination of the incorporated material as elements of a physical process, perception, or thought in the overall synthesis of the actual occurrence. Prehension as the means for cognition and judgment is also the means for concept abstraction from the material prehended. What are abstracted are the elemental aspects of the above-mentioned continuum for possible becoming. So we are once more brought back to the conditions for actual process in the realm of possibility. Whitehead called those abstracted elements from possibility eternal objects. They are variables for determinability which are never exhausted by determination. This means that their capacity for qualitative and intensive realization is always in access to how they are realized in a particular actualization. Their singular determinability is what Whitehead called their individual essence, and the way that they express degrees of connected systemicity with other eternal objects is their relational essence. Furthermore, these degrees of connectivity provide the conditions for organization and possibility for actualities, given how their connections express structures of affinities that will be partially disclosed through actual process. But to repeat, and this is crucial, prehension describes the very process of establishing a determinative synthetical relation between the material to be synthesized, and that material includes the eternal objects. In other words, the relational togetherness and relational determinacy of eternal objects are dependent on prehensions, and thus on actual process. This is a very important matter for Whitehead, for relational structures have no existence, determinative power, or any ontological status apart from how they are established by prehensions, and this is true for the continuity and realizability of eternal objects as well. But how is this to be effectuated by actual process? To answer this question, I will briefly describe Whitehead's theory of primordial process, whereby the eternal objects gain their continuity of realizability. In primordial becoming, the initial prehensions have the individual essences of the eternal objects as their exclusive datum, and as such, their prehensive incorporation and transformation of these singularities is through a process of valuation, not evaluation, as evaluation is a conscious process. Rather, valuation is the establishment of some determinable value, an intensity for effective realization. Value for Whitehead, and much as it seems to be for Rescher, is a matter of how something can be effective, have some kind of positive determination, and it is within a process of valuation that the variables for efficacy are brought into a certain order and gain a certain intensity of effect. But, as with Rescher, the values are not themselves causal. While determinable, they themselves do not determine anything in actuality. This is where prehensive valuation becomes both formative and efficacious. Valuation through prehensions provides this determinability and determination by both activating some degree of intensive value from the singular variables and establishing a multiplex of direct connections to the other variables through the active concatenation of these prehensions into a unity. When considered apart from this process, the eternal objects are just abstractions. They are abstractions in the sense of being conceptually divorced from how they have a sufficiently effective determinability. In other words, without being already included in a prehension, with its valuative processes, these elements are without any determinable order, just bare nothings. As this primordial actualization is an active process for Whitehead, it has some self-determinative movement towards unity. But it is never a unity that is finalized by any particular complete actual occurrence, or even finalizable. For the valuation of eternal objects provokes the realization of these values as the goal for all resultant, non-primordial actual activities. This can never be brought to a close because of the infinite capability for realization the eternal objects now have through the connections established by actual process. But this telic movement towards creative actualization establishes gradations of degree of relevance amongst the eternal objects, so that there is an added intensity to their realization through the relative relevance for compatibility that they now have towards each other. In other words, we would have a valuative ordering of possibility into gradations of more to less applicability to any actual realization, effectively identical to the arrangement of a scale of value to possibility in Rescher's theory. Thus, due to an actual process of synthetical valuation, we may obtain the very conditions for axiogenetical metaphysics that Rescher has postulated. Thank you.